In the lands of Ireland, in Brittany and Cornwall, the Isle of Man, Scotland, and Wales. That's Wales the country, not Wales like Wales the country. Anyway, the stories which Shonagis and bards told and sang became richer with the retelling. The bards, or poet-singers, lived with kings and queens, chieftains, and successful warriors. They entertained at royal feasts or when visitors arrived, in halls brimming with steaks from the castle's herd and jugs of wine from the royal vines. The poets sang. In Ireland, they sang about the Tuatha de Danann, the children of the goddess Dana, the last generation of gods to govern Ireland. When the mortal Milesians invaded, the Dananns escaped under the earth into the other world, became the She, meaning peace, or the fairy folk. Many Celtic heroes were descendants of the Tuatha de Danann. The gods known to the Tuatha de Danann in Ireland were also common to other Celtic peoples. In Celtic mythology, druids are important beings, like Kim Star and Caledonia Skytar, for that matter. We have a lot of important beings about us, don't we? Anyway, they were the priestly class of the Celtic society, the druids. With their knowledge of science and philosophy and cosmos, they advised the rulers. Their Celtic name, Druvid, means thorough knowledge. And so, the druids were the ultimate earthly authority. Animals, too, played significant roles in Celtic mythology. There are loyal hunting hounds, including 2 immortal ones who belong to Finn McCool. Isn't that a great name? That's not a name made up like in Charles Schultz times, though he did use it for Joe Cool. But that's a name from like the 10,000 way back, Finn McCool. Love it. Anyway, cows feature largely, as in the Cattle Raid, a story about a long war over 2 bulls from the Irish epic, the Toimbo Calange. Horses, pigs, birds, even cockroaches are also important animals who teach their humans their lessons. Then there's monsters, too. Kelpies and giants offer challenges and opportunities for heroes to rise above the tricks they try. Besides animals and monsters, the fairy kingdom and the dwellers of the other world both help and challenge. Even the weather plays an important role in Celtic mythology. The bard's poems extolled hospitality. A visitor knocks and the door opens to a warm hearth and a good meal. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? To the weary traveler, a cabin at the edge of the woods holds as ready a refuge as the loftiest castle. Honor and duty in the guise. A sworn promise under the pain of death also appeared in many myths. Even enemies are tied to one another by these values. The reservoir of Celtic myths and legends is seemingly bottomless. Tonight's stories, yes, we're going to have stories here in a minute, right after the preamble intro. Tonight's stories are from a book titled 101 10-Minute Celtic Myths and Legends. Now, we all know that the Celts, and the Irish in particular, are known for anything but brevity in their speech or tales. One may ask, is there no such thing as a direct conversation in Ireland? Well, never mind your desire to move on to a new place or a new subject, your need to shoot like an arrow to some important engagement. An old joke claims the Irish never answer a question except with another question. Never answer a question, but with another question. Ha! Now whoever will told you that? It'd be funny if it were not so true. Just as it is true that the Irish has no words for our simple yes or no. Indirection is an Irish way of life. Aye, that it is, lad. And so it is with the Celtic myths and legends. In fact, one of our stories tonight is called the Cattle Raid, or in the Irish, the Toimbo Calange, as I mentioned. It's an epic tale of war that takes place over many years, and if I were to tell you the whole story in one sitting, it would take me nearly 10 hours. And from experience, I know my voice tops out about 5.5 to 6, and I can't talk anymore for a while. So fortunately, this story and others is condensed down to a mere 10 minutes or less. I thought this would be fun to do just so we can get a taste of some of these great stories, and I hope you'll find these tales to each be true to their own story. And by the way, I'm working on putting each one of these ones, the long version, on our blog, our website. So if you find one here you really like, and it's only 6 minutes long, you want to hear the whole version of it, you can go check out the website. It's likely to be 2, 3, 5 hours long. On with the story. Let's see. Well, being almost St. Patrick's Day, let's start with Ireland. Labra the Mariner. Man was a son of Ailill, who was killed on the orders of Kovik on the day Kovik stabbed Ailill's father. Larry, really Larry, the King of Ireland. Okay, it's spelled Laery, but it's still Larry. No, not Larry Albert. Larry was Kovic's brother. By killing him, Kovic became king. By killing Ailill, his nephew, Kovic, removed a threat to the power he usurped. King Kovic then made his nephew's son, Mayan, eat the hearts of his father and grandfather. Ew. As if this was not brutal enough, the new king ordered Mayan to eat a mouse and her young. What? The youth was forbidden to cry out during the ordeal. Mayan was so repulsed that he lost the ability to speak. I imagine. King Kovic banished the now mute Mayan. He reasoned that man was no challenge to the throne. So Mayan bid farewell to Moriath, the daughter of the king of the Theramorc, and departed sadly from Ireland in the rule of his great uncle. He was sorry to leave Moriath, whom he loved, behind. No one in her father's court could do anything to soothe Moriath's broken heart. Now Moriath, who was tired of everyone's efforts to make her happy, took action on her own. She called Craftiny, the harper, to her and commissioned him to travel to the land of Gaul to deliver her message to Mayan, her true love, because it was said he resided under the protection of the Gaulish king. The king had learned of Mayan's royal birth. Now Moriath gave Craftiny the lyrics of a song she wrote to her love, and Craftiny added the melody. When the harper sang and played the song upon his harp, Mayan was overwhelmed by the beauty of the message. He spoke of his love for Moriath out loud to Craftiny. The emotion had loosened his tongue. Learning of the return of Mayan's speech, the king of Gaul ordered a fleet of ships and a force of warriors to accompany the youth to Ireland to demand the throne back. Kovic's warriors alerted to the incoming invasion, but before the Irish king could mount a defense, Mayan's forces surrounded Kovic's army. They killed Kovic and many of his warriors. One of Kovic's druids asked the name of the young man who commanded the invasion. "He is the mariner," the Gaul warrior responded. "So can he speak?" asked the druid, who recognized Mayan. "Labred," answered the warrior, in Gaelic, which means he speaks. The name used for Ailill's son Mayan from that day forward, even after he became king of Ireland, was Labra the mariner. Labra the mariner married Moriath, and they lived happily as king and queen. The king had a strange habit, however. No, not of eating mice. He didn't like that still. This habit came about because of his embarrassment over having long ears, you see. Even the queen said in private they resembled a horse's ears. To avoid their discovery, Labra the mariner got his hair cut only once every year, and once the cut was done, he had the unlucky stylist killed, and he donned a hood until the hair grew over his ears again. All the trained stylists were already dead, so the king had to call upon different subjects from other walks of life to cut his hair from year to year. One year the job fell to a widow's only son. "Oh, please, sire, I will tell no one what I saw. Do not order me killed. If you do, my poor mother will surely starve," he pleaded with the king. Now the youth's devotion to his mother moved the king to acquiesce. "But you must take an oath never to tell anyone," Labra the mariner demanded. The youth took the oath not to tell, and soon he became very sick, and his mother called a druid to intervene. "Yes, well, you see, your son's problem, ma'am, is he's got some kind of secret he's holding, and it is my opinion he must tell that secret that he's holding so dear, for it's a secret that's taken his life," the druid advised. The druid addressed the son. "You must travel at once on the highway to the crossroads, boy. You turn right. Tell you, I'm not a boy, I'm almost 42 years old. Well, you're not going to make it 43 unless you shut up and listen to me. Travel at once on the highway to the crossroads, I say. Turn left. No, turn right. Tell your secret to the first tree you meet on the road." "A tree?" "Yes, a tree. Afterwards you'll be well." The youth followed the druid's instructions. The first tree he met was a willow. Willows are good trees. He freed himself of the secret and returned home fully recovered. Along the highway, Craftiny the harper traveled to the crossroads himself. He turned right and searched for the tree he might fell for wood for his new harp. He saw the willow, decided it would be perfect, so he cut it down and used it for the harp. "You cut down a willow, you mean thing." That evening, Craftiny played for the king and the queen and their guests on his new instrument, and he sang, "Labra the mariner has the ears of a horse." Craftily was as surprised as everyone else at the words that came out of his mouth, but the king began to laugh. He removed the hood from his head, he showed his long ears to the guests in the hall, they too laughed, and Craftily entertained the hall with music from his harp, so pure that shortly no one cared at all about the king's ears. Not even the king. So that's what a condensed story sounds like. Again, I've read the original of that, and it goes on and on and on. It's fun, but that's what it sounds like when it's condensed. So, next one is The Island of the Black Pig. Oink, oink. The king of Erin had been hunting since dawn, and he had no luck. He ventured farther and farther into the woods after a prize catch. Now it was getting dark, and he had eaten the lunch he had packed many hours ago. The king was so hungry, his horse's ears twitched from the growls of his royal stomach, looking much like King Labra's ears indeed. A black pig darted out from behind a tree a short distance ahead. "I'll get you, pig!" shouted the king. He kicked his horse to make him hurry. The pig disappeared into a thick cluster of tall oaks. "You can't hide from me, you pig!" the king yelled. He dug his spurs to the horse's side. The horse rode into the dark woods. The pig ran into a clearing, and the starving king could think only of eating the animal. He visualized its chops on a plate smothered in sauce. He salivated at the thought. He got even hungrier. The pig raced out of the clearing and up a hill. The king prodded his horse to go faster. Down into the valley, the pig tore through a low-growing bush as it continued. The king thought of the queen in the dining hall behind a table full of delicacies, and he pursued the pig. Up another hill, down under a different valley, and again and again. "I'll eat you yet, pig," the crazed king shouted. The pig made its way to the sandy shore. Ahead lay the turbulent sea. "Aha! You can't trick me, you suckling dinner, you!" hailed the king. The king dove into the sea and he began to swim. The king guided his horse to follow, and the horse drowned. Undeterred from his plan to eat the pig, the king too began to swim. He followed the pig to an island in the middle of the sea. "I'll find you, pig, or I will not rest," yelled the hungry king. He was a bit nervous because the island appeared desolate. Not even a hut was in sight. "No matter, I'll have my pig," he consoled himself. The black pig then ran through the wild undergrowth. The king stumbled in heated pursuit. Now, he was thirsty, too, and it was dark, and he blamed the pig for that. In fact, he was convinced the pig was the reason for his hunger. The animal was more than game he happened to spot in the woods. It was the pig's fault. The king had not had a prize earlier in the day. How dare the pig be so smug to lead the king on this chase after all the injustice it had dealt him after all? Hadn't the pig even drowned the king's horse? No horses were hurt in the filming of this story. Poseidon took charge of the horse, and the horses don't actually drown. They become sea mares, and etc., etc. Okay. The king gasped for breath when he saw the pig standing on top of a high hill. "I'll roast you when I get there," he croaked. Behind the pig, the moon shone on a castle with a gold roof. The king imagined the pig on a spit in a large fireplace. And I'm getting hungry now. He licked his lips in anticipation. He climbed to the tall hill to the sound of his empty stomach growling. When he arrived at the top of the hill, the king was very overheated and weak, and there was no sign of the black pig. The castle door was open. The doorway was a wide opening, surrounded by razor blades. Well, that's a good way to keep people out. "I can jump through it easily, though," boasted the king. He entered a large parlor. He collapsed into a comfortable chair before a blazing fire. A table laid in white cloth, upon which were lighted candles, appeared in front of him. Rough. It was set with platters of rich meats and frothy jugs of cider. The king forgot about the black pig, and he ate and drank everything on the table. Music led him to a room where he found a bed under a quilt of gold threads. The king lay upon the bed and he fell asleep. He dreamed he saw a beautiful woman in the room. In the morning, when he awoke, he looked for her and he saw no one. He found a table laid with a fine breakfast and ate a robust meal. The smell of flowers drew him outside to a wondrous garden in which he walked all day. When he grew hungry once more, the king jumped past the razors through the castle door. He found the fire roaring in the fireplaces and table with the extravagant dinner. He slept on the bed with the gold quilt. He dreamed of the beautiful woman again. The following day, the garden was twice as large when he took his walk after breakfast. He returned to the castle for dinner in the parlor with the great fireplace. Before he went to sleep, he said to himself, If I could live here, it's not such a bad place. Yet I would give up my chase, the black pig, if I could just find my way home." The beautiful woman of the king's dreams appeared in the room with a golden quilt. "A ship awaits at the shore to take you home, your majesty." The king thanked her for the ship and asked her name. The form of the beautiful woman faded and before him stood, yeah, you guessed it, the black pig. The king ran down the steep hill and through the wild undergrowth to the harbor. He boarded the ship and set sail for home. So, careful about eating pigs. They might turn out to be a beautiful woman that wants to do you a good turn. Or they might be a yummy black pig. I don't know. But speaking of pigs and princesses and beautiful women, our next story is The Fair Princess with the Pig's Head. As soon as I answer this message from our sponsors. Oh, cool. Uno más cerveza, por favor. No, I mean, uno momento, por favor. Yeah, here we go. Once every 7 years in the other world, all the men, including the king, had a contest to decide who would be the next king. They called it a caucus. No, they didn't. That'd be silly. The contest was a 2-mile race to the top of a hill, where a chair was placed for the winner. Sounds like a caucus race from Alice in Wonderland, though. Anyway, the first to arrive there sat in the empty chair and became the king. Easy enough. Climb up the hill, sit in the chair, boop, you're the king. The present king, who had ruled for ages already, though, dreaded the upcoming contest. What if I'm no longer the first up the hill? He asked the druid. The druid responded with, You will have the chair and crown forever, my majesty. Well, unless your son-in-law takes them away. So the king thanked the druid and dismissed him. The druid obeyed, but unaccustomed to such rude treatment from the king, he accidentally dropped his wand before the door was slammed closed behind him. The king, in solitude, lamented the druid's words. Since he had no sons to claim his crown, of course it would be his daughter's future husband to beat him to the chair. And so the king summoned his beautiful daughter, the princess. When the servant left to find her, the king noticed the druid's wand laying on the floor. What good fortune from me. Father, what is your wish? Asked the princess when she arrived. She was as fair in spirit as she was beautiful. Come here, my beautiful daughter. The king touched his daughter's head with the hazel wand and became the head of a pig. I am safe now from harm. You may go, daughter. Now, experiencing the power of the enchantment, but not knowing its effects, the poor princess sought out the looking-glass on the wall. She shrieked so loudly it broke. In the corridor she met the druid, who was waiting for the opportunity to retrieve his wand. Alas, I am too late. Help me, please, the princess cried. You, my daughter, my dear, you will have this head until you marry the son of Finn MacCool, the druid answered. And so the princess traveled from the other world to the land of the mortals. She asked where she might find Finn MacCool, and an old man she met said the Fianna were at Knocknar. Thanking him, the princess with the head of a pig was soon in Knocknar herself, where she set up residence in the thick of the forest. And one day Oisin, Finn's son, was in the forest hunting with 5 of the Fianna under his command and their hounds. The prize from the day's hunt was tremendous, too heavy for 6 men to carry back to Finn's castle. Quick aside, that single paragraph is a 2-hour story. Anyway, where are we at? Oh, yes. So Oisin says, Boys, we've come too far into the woods to be able to take all this game out with us. I'm tired, said one man. Me too, said all the others in unison. Well, let's get out of here. So he turned to go with his hounds at his heels, and the 4 others departed with him. Oisin spoke to his hound, who remained. Let's rest, and somehow we'll get this to the castle. The hound lay down and fell asleep. The princess watched what had happened from her place in the woods. She liked the demeanor of the tired hunter, Oisin, and she appreciated his courage. Edging into the open, she said, Bind some of it, won't you, and I'll carry that much. So Oisin did as the princess suggested, and he handed her a bundle to carry. That left a large bundle of carcasses for him. Together the 2 set out for Finn's castle. The bundles were very heavy, and soon they got tired. Let's rest, Oisin said. He cleared a large rock of pine needles and other debris that covered it, and invited her to sit alongside him. The sun warmed them through the shadows of the trees, and they sat companionably in silence. How odd to see the head of a pig upon such a fair maiden, Oisin thought. He reached for her hand, and the softness of her skin moved him to speak. Well, that and she was very hot and had opened up her blouse, and probably the white breasts also. Anyway, he was moved to speak. How unfortunate to have such a head protuberance, growth upon you shoulders. Or I should say, trying to be delicate. Yes, well, I have not always had it. My father, King of Tirna Og, cast an enchantment on me which replaced my head with his, with this pig. I have come to Knockanaar in hopes of finding the only man who can help me. Only if I marry the son of Finn McCool will my head return, the princess answered. Fair maiden, I am Oishin, son of Finn McCool. I will help you. And so Oishin and the princess left the game in the spot where they stopped to rest and returned with the hound to the castle. Oishin told Finn and all the Fianna at Knockanaar they wished to marry immediately. When the vows were ready, Oishin exclaimed, You are truly fair, he said, and into the restored eyes of his beautiful wife. Wherever you go, and wherever you turn, I will follow. And then she turned, and Oishin went with her, not going to Knockanaar to see his father or his son. That very day they set out for Tirna Og, and never stopped till they came to her father's castle. And when they came, there was a welcome before them, for the king thought his daughter was lost. That same year there was to be a choice of a king, and when the appointed day came at the end of the 7th year, all the great men and champions, the king himself met together at the front of the castle to run and see who would be first in the chair on the hill. But before a man of them was halfway up to the hill, Oishin was sitting above in the chair before all of them. And after that time no one stood up to run for the office against Oishin, and he spent many happy years as king in Tirna Og. Well, that explains what running for a political office is all about, isn't it? Running up the hill, yeah. Maybe a good way to separate the some of the folks. Anyway, now we journey on to. Let's see, which direction is that? We journey eastward to Cornwall on the Isle of Man with the Benvery. Once upon a time. Now, let's see. Oh, yes. Once there was a poor fisherman named Odopadden. Now, Odopadden could never catch a fish. One day he was out at the edge of the sea, rocking in his boat. He was on the verge of dying of hunger, which is reasonable since he's a fisherman who can't catch fish. Suddenly, a fish flew the air. Try that again. Suddenly, a fish flew through the air and landed in his lap. Startled, he looked up from his empty nets. He saw Benvery, which is another name for a mermaid. Mermaids can be playful. Hello, Odopadden, she said. I thought you might need a fish. And how is your fishing going? By tomorrow I'll be dead. Nonsense. The sea is full of fish. If I fill your net, will you give me a reward? I have nothing to give. Are you married? No, I'm not married. I'm just hungry. Nor do I wish to be married, frankly. Well, if you marry me, I'll make certain your nets are filled and you will not ever want again. Oh, how can you marry me? You can't leave the ocean. The Benvery told him a silver sea trout would be in his next catch. He must take it to Port Erin and sell it for a gold sovereign. He was to throw the sovereign into the sea at Craigna Bay, a very dangerous spot whose name meant Rock of Drowning. And then he and the mermaid would be married. Well, Odopadden agreed, and immediately the mermaid filled his nets. And among the fish for shore was a silver trout. The next day he traveled to Port Erin with the trout. Now he happened on a fair where a crowd gathered around a showman. Before the showman were a cat with a fiddle and a mouse and a cockroach who danced. The crowd cheered and filled the showman's hat with coins. Hey, would you like to purchase my cat, my mouse, and my cockroach? The showman asked Odo. You could make a fortune. Aye, I would if I had money, said Odopadden. I don't need money. I'll sell you my cat with the fiddle for a fine sea trout. I want a gold sovereign for my trout, Odopadden said. The showman laughed. A sovereign! Ha ha ha! You will have plenty with the cat and the fiddle, eh? Tomorrow bring another trout. I'll sell you another. I'll sell you the mouse. The day after, bring another. You can have the cockroach too. All of them. So Odopadden bought the cat with the fiddle home. That night a storm raged outside his cottage. When he looked out, he saw the mermaid. You made me a promise, Odo. Where is the sovereign? She asked. I have better than that, Odopadden said, showing the cat with the fiddle. How is that going to help me get ashore? Give me another trout, you'll see. So the next morning, Odo travelled to Port Erin with a second trout. He exchanged it for the mouse, and he asked for the cockroach too. The showman insisted a third trout for the cockroach. Another storm beat against Odo's windows that evening. He saw the Benveri at the shore. What of the sovereign you promised me, Odo Paddon? I have something better, my lady. What can be better than coming ashore? Odo Paddon told the cat to play the fiddle and the mouse began to dance. Oh, how is a dancing mouse going to get me on shore? The fisherman asked for another trout so he could show her. The next morning, one silver trout was in his nets. He exchanged it for the cockroach at the fair, and a third storm shook his windows that night. And the mermaid again asked for the sovereign. This time he showed her how the cockroach danced when the cat played the fiddle. Odo Paddon, I am a king's daughter. A wicked druid, Drogyantach, enchanted me. I will remain a mermaid until he has paid a gold sovereign at the Rock of Drowning, or until something can make him laugh, which has not happened in 7,000 years. Your games, Odo Paddon, have destroyed my last chance to escape. Farewell. The mermaid swam off, and Odo Paddon grew sad. The following morning he took his sack to Craignibaya, and he shouted for the druid. On top of the Rock of Drowning, a dark man with glistening black eyes appeared. You will regret calling me, little man. I will feed the creatures of the deep with your body, said the evil druid. And I, said Odo Paddon, will make you laugh in exchange for the Benveri. Make me laugh. That is impossible. Yet I am intrigued. You make me laugh 3 times. She is yours. And from the sack, Odo Paddon drew out the cat with the fiddle, the mouse, and the cockroach. He told the cat to play and the others to dance. To his own surprise, the druid laughed. The cat kept playing, and the mouse and the cockroach turned their hind legs to do a jig, which they followed with a curtsy. The druid laughed a second time. And now, when the cat played again, the mouse danced a pirouette. His tail whipped around. He hit the cockroach, who fell into the cat, who dropped the fiddle on the mouse's head, and the mouse passed out. Despite himself, the druid laughed a third time. The mermaid instantly became a lovely maiden, whose beauty captivated Odo Paddon, and Drogyantach, the evil druid, began to shout, You tricked me with your cat, your mouse, and your cockroach! The Rock of Drowning flew apart. Drogyantach descended into the fiery furnace in its middle, and because he had uttered 3 words which all Manx fishermen know can't be said at sea, these were Het, Rug, and Dale, the words for cat, mouse, and cockroach. Keep that in mind. Don't say those 3 words at sea. Cat, Lug, and Dale. No. The 3 animals changed into an old fiddler, a young man, and a pretty girl. The evil druid had put a spell on them too, you see, because he did not like their music. The trio promised to play at the wedding of Odo Paddon and the princess, and Odo Paddon became one of the greatest princes of Ellenvannon. That is the Benveri. Crazy, huh? Hello, fairy. So good to see you. And thank you for the absinthe. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. I'm sorry. I was doing this reading thing. So our next story also is from Cornwall and the Isle of Man, called Eshin and Ishadi. Nayeshin was very jealous of his brother, Eshin. Both were handsome princes, the sons of the old king Ellenvannon. Remember Ellenvannon from the previous story? He was the fisherman. Anyway, he married the princess. They had 2 sons, and their sons were Nayeshin and Eshin. Eshin, the elder son, was fair, brave in battle, and believed in true love. Nayeshin had a very weak character. He would do anything to get ahead of those he hated, which included his brother. At a hilltop fortress, Nayeshin, he's the stinky one, came upon a wrinkled old man with one blue eye and one green eye. He told the man his brother made his life intolerable. Inside this basket is a snake, said the man. Put the basket under your brother's bed during the day. By evening he'll be so ugly no one will look at him. So at dawn Eshin left the castle to hunt, and Nayeshin put the snake under his bed. When evening approached, a strange figure with grey skin, a bird's beak and drool in the middle of his chin appeared at the castle gate. He rode Prince Eschen's horse.
I am Prince Eschen,
he told the guards. What? What? Murder him! Murder him! They cried, not really understanding him and certainly not recognizing the prince. Poor Eschen shouted for his father and mother. He's no son of mine, said Padragoro, the king. Impulsive indeed, said the Benveri, the queen. Eschen rode off. He came upon a stream, and when he glanced in the water, he was horrified. He sent his horse back to the palace. Finding a rock on which to sit, he began to ponder the situation. A noise distracted him. He went to investigate. An old woman was struggling with a bundle of sticks. She was sliding from one side to the other of her ancient back. Sticks fell here and there, and she was picking them up even as more got loose. Good day, grandmother. How far do you go with that bundle? Eschen asked respectfully.
As far as the summit of the dark mountains, as far as...
Oh, well, whatever it is, I'll carry it for you, said Eschen. As they climbed, he sighed.
Is it too heavy, then? Because we're going to the summit of the dark mountains and away to the...
No. It's not that. My heart is too heavy, Eschen told her his story. When they arrived at the old woman's cottage, on the way to the dark mountains, she prepared a meal. After dinner, she said,
Walk across the hills to the fairy fortress. A shriveled man with one blue eye and one green eye will meet you. He's got one green eye and one blue eye. Yes, that's it. When he asks, tell him what troubles you. When he gives you advice, whatever advice he gives you, because he can't stop talking. He's always talking. He never shuts up. You get him talking. Yes, mother. When he gives you advice, do the opposite of whatever he tells you, all right? Do the opposite. Yeah.
So the man with the eyes of blue and green greeted Eschen. It is soon the hour for the Queen of the Fairies to arrive. Hide when you see her coming. So Eschen watched a bright light bob across the mountains, each bob closer and closer, and soon the Queen of the Fairies stood before him. Around her hair was a silver circle. We'll see her again in the 9 o'clock story, by the way. Greetings, Queen of the Fairies, he shouted out, completely ignoring what the blue-eyed, green-eyed guy told him to hide. What do you mean by addressing me, Eschen? He told her his story. Then the sympathetic fairies led him across the ocean on top of the water to an island unknown to him. The queen showed him a ship, and it said the people on board were descendants of Orion the Hunter, the light of the other world, and one of them was Ceiliuradh, the everlasting pearl, the only one who could bring back his former self. Ceiliuradh will be your future wife, the queen said, because you are descended from the ocean god Manan MacLear. She grew more serious. To have what you want, you must seize the sword of light and the pearl of great beauty, which you should never give up. You will meet a woman of wondrous beauty, but you cannot be distracted. Nothing can deter you from your quest, said the queen. She showed him a cliff path and disappeared. Eschen came to a great cave filled with warriors. A brilliant gold and silver sword hung on the rough rock wall. The warriors said they were bored with guarding the sword, and they invited Eschen to drink with them. He refused, and the warriors drank until they fell asleep. Then Eschen stacked table upon table till he was high enough to reach the sword of light. A large raven sounded an alarm, and the warriors awoke. Nevermore! Eschen fled through the narrow tunnel and saw a hall where different warriors were enjoying a great feast. A magnificent pearl provided the hall's only light. The warriors said they were bored with guarding the pearl. Eschen refused their offer of drink with them and waited until they passed out. Grabbing the pearl, he gasped to see the hall grow dark. The raven sounded its alarm, and Eschen fled. He came upon a seashore palace ablaze with light. 7 beautiful maidens invited him to rest, and he refused. An exquisite lady aboard a tremendous ship requested his sword and pearl. She said she was Ceiliuradh, daughter of Orion, and he turned her down. Eschen closed his eyes in horror that he might have insulted the only one who could help him. When he reopened them, he saw the old woman with the sticks. She handed him a mirror, and he rejoiced to see himself restored. The woman instructed Eschen to return to his father's castle, to toss his prizes into the dark sea for all to witness. The king and queen were delighted that their son returned with such great treasures. When Eschen threw them into the sea, they screamed. The great hand of Danann himself caught the treasure as a golden chariot appeared in the courtyard, and Ceiliuradh stepped out of it. We are destined for each other because you have shown true character, Eschen. Ellen Vannon celebrated the marriage amid great rejoicing, and Eschen, remember the stinky little brother, departed from the castle, cursing the fairy folk, and he was never seen again. Good riddance. All right, then. So that was Cornwall. I think this next one was Isle of Man. This is called the Eine's Long Leather Bag. Many beggars wandered in old Ireland. Eine McCarran was not surprised when a Cayley, an old woman, came to beg for supper. Eine was not rich, but she and her 3 daughters could meet their needs. Under their hearthstone was a long leather bag filled with gold coins. Eine's husband, Caelan, left it there when he died. Eine was kind-hearted. She gave the Cayley a bowl of soup and went to fetch a shawl to give her. When she came back, she found the soup untouched. The bag with its coins are gone. "Oh, what will we do?" Eine lamented to her daughters. "Well, I'm old enough to support myself and help you," said the oldest daughter, Ceiliuradh. "But before I seek my fortune, would you please bake me one of those dear soddig cakes?" "Would you like a whole oat cake, or one with a piece missing as a blessing?" asked Eine. "Oh, give me the whole cake. If I'm not back in a year and day, you'll know I've succeeded." Ceiliuradh's mother baked a cake for her daughter. Hat in hand, Ceiliuradh strode into the woods. After a while, she came to a very odd-looking house. She knocked at the door, and an old hag answered. "We give nothing for free here. If you're looking for work, I need a maid," the old woman sharply stated. Ceiliuradh accepted the work, but she was curious about the old woman's demand that she not look up the chimney when she cleaned the hearth. "Goodbye, Coop." "Oh, I can't stand it when I'm told what not to do," she said to herself. So the next day the old woman went out, and Ceiliuradh peeked up the chimney. "Why, it's our leather bag!" she cried. Quickly she grabbed it and ran from the door. She yanked on her hat and hurried for home. On the way she passed a horse. "No one has run me down in 7 years," said the horse. "Sorry, too busy," said Ceiliuradh. She passed a sheep nearly lost in the woods. Man, no one has trimmed my fleece for 7 years." "You need a good cut, that's true, but I can't. Sorry, said Ceiliuradh. A goat said, "Meh, no one has changed my tether in 7 years." "Oh, I'm not good at that. Sorry, answered Ceiliuradh. A lime kiln said, "No one has cleaned me for 7 years. 7 years, and no one has cleaned me." Ceiliuradh just rushed by without saying anything. A cow whose udders hung to the ground said, "Moo, no one has milked me for 7 years." Ceiliuradh ignored it. Then a mill said, "It's been 7 years I've been turned." Ceiliuradh lay upon a sack of flour to sleep. The old hag saw the bag was gone when she returned. She rushed after Ceiliuradh. "Did you see a girl with a bag pass by?" she asked the horse. "She went that way," the horse said. The sheep, goat, lime kiln, cow all told her the same thing. The mill told her, "Yes, she's asleep in the flour sack. I've not been turned in 7 years." The old woman ignored him and touched Ceiliuradh with her hazel wand, and the girl became a stone statue of herself. And the old hag returned home with the bag. A year passed, and Eine wondered about her firstborn. "Oh, nothing she ever does is on time," said the second daughter, Ceiliuradh. Eine looked up at Ceiliuradh. "Well, there's a chance she's in trouble," Ceiliuradh said. "I'll go. Please bake me a soddig cake." "Do you want a piece missing for my blessing?" her mother asked. "The whole thing, please," Ceiliuradh said. Ceiliuradh, too, knocked on the door of the Cayley. "I'm looking for work. Do you have any?" Cayley began working as the maid early the next day, after hearing the old woman's instructions about not looking up the chimney. Wasting no time, once the hag left, Ceiliuradh found the coins. Quickly she fled through the door, and over the hill she sped past the horse. "Oh, no one has run me down in 7 years," it said. Ceiliuradh barely noticed. She passed the woolly sheep. "Meh, no one has trimmed me for 7 years." Ceiliuradh ran on. The tethered goat lamented, the messy lime kiln called to her, and the unmilked cow cried out. But Ceiliuradh sped by like a blur. And the mill said, "Turn me, please." She lay upon a sack of flour to sleep. The hag rushed to the horse, who showed her where Ceiliuradh had gone. The sheep, goat, lime kiln, and cow did the same. The mill said, "She's in there in the flour sack. She won't turn me. You know, it's been 7 years since I've... Hey!" The old woman touched her with a wand, and Ceiliuradh turned to stone too. Somehow Ceiliuradh had not noticed her sister's statue, which now stood next to hers. The old hag returned home with the bag. The hag with the bag went home. A year and a day later, the third daughter, Ceiliuradh, left home. Her soda cake had a piece missing for the mother's blessings, because someone with a name starts with Callie is usually a good daughter, isn't she? She approached the old hovel, she knocked and agreed to work as a maid. The next morning she fled the old woman's house with the coins in a leather bag, just like her sisters had. Unlike them, Ceiliuradh stopped to rub down the horse. She gave the goat a new tether, she cleaned the kiln, she milked the cow, she turned the mill, and tired and exhausted, she fell asleep on a sack. The hag came fast upon her trail, but she could get no answers. "Ask somewhere else," sheep, goat, horse, lime kiln, and cow all said. "Wait, wait, wait," said the mill. "Whisper into my wheel so I can hear you better." The wheel twisted itself around with all its might, and it pulled the hag into the cogs. The old woman was ground into many pieces, which washed out a hole. The mill then woke Ceiliuradh and told her what to do. She took the hag's wand and touched the two stones, which became Ceiliuradh and Ceiliuradh. She touched the long leather bag, for the mill had promised that it would never be empty, and then she burned the wand. The three sisters hurried home, and Einie rejoiced. And as for the hag, the pair still hears her wails coming from the hole near the mill. Whew, boy, that was a long one. Let's see. Let's head to Scotland, shall we? This next one is the classic with many derivative works, including 9 p.m. Stories Tonight, the Ballad of Rosamond. This is Tam Lin. It was late in the spring, and Janet danced in leaps until she reached the hazel woods. There we go. Thick with roses and honeysuckle. Now Janet's father, the king, had given her this stretch of woods. People said it possessed magic, but Janet wasn't thinking about magic today. Today she would pick the first roses of the season. Hurrying to a nearby bush, Janet plucked a delicate flower heartedly and placed it into her upturned hat. "Nightvi." "What are you doing picking roses in this sacred place?" said a male voice. Janet spun round and saw a stranger. How had he gotten through the green thicket of rose bushes without snapping a branch? How dare he speak to her like this? "What nerve have you to speak to me like that on my own land?" said Janet to the handsome young man. For he was a handsome young man. He was the most unusual-looking man she had ever seen. In fact, many warriors had feasted at the king's banquets. Many had proposed marriage, and Janet had refused them all. After a fashion, none had interested her like this stranger, you see. The more she looked at him, the better he appeared. His features changed. His wondrous eyes went from blue to green to lustrous, unnamed colors. His beautiful mouth seemed to be speaking, smiling, and laughing all at the same time. Janet stared until she saw the woods begin to change. The leaves became a whirlpool of shapes around the trees and over her head. Janet could barely see the stranger through the spinning. Then she felt his arm around her shoulder. He held her tight, and she closed her eyes. How long they spent like this is a mystery. He left without her knowing, and somehow Janet awoke in her bed in the castle. She stayed out of the special woods for a while. But one day Janet could not bear to be away any longer from the hazels and the roses. Hopefully, she hoped, the stranger would be waiting for her too. She ran into the middle of her woods and she stopped at the spring. She heard his voice but didn't see him. "Please, what is your name? What is your purpose?" Janet asked the invisible stranger. "Tam Lin. I am the guardian of the spring, named by Morrigan, the Dark Queen goddess." Janet was mesmerized again. Things around her blurred. Though he was invisible, she felt Tam Lin's presence. Sometime later, she found herself home in the castle with no recollection of getting there. Now, the next time Janet went to the special woods, she was eager to find Tam Lin. She followed the narrow path through the bushes to the spring in the middle. She was disturbed that the sound of Tam Lin's voice was so faint it appeared to come from far away, yet it was speaking into her ear. "The Dark Queen has made me prisoner. She and the followers plan to sacrifice me at Samhain, when the gates open between the world of the mortals and the other world." "No, she can't do that," Janet cried. She realized at that moment she was in love with Tam Lin. Will you help me? Tamlin asked.
I'll do anything to help you escape, she answered.
But she heard his voice no more. At the feast of Samhain, Janet celebrated with her father and their guests. When everyone was quite drunk, she departed for the special woods. She carried 2 large skin bags. She filled one with fresh milk and tied it to a donkey. Tucking the other bag away, she led the donkey into the woods. The ground vibrated, and Janet could hear the tiny hooves of horses underneath the moist earth. She listened until it quieted. They seemed to have traveled past. She led the donkey on the path to the crossroads beyond the woods. The tiny hooves thundered below her feet. They seemed to ride harder the nearer they got to the crossroads. They took the underground path from the south to the north. Then they rode east to west below Janet's feet. She stopped the donkey at the crossroads. At the center point, where it was flat, stood a tall stone. Before it, Janet set down the bag of milk. She furrowed through the weeds which had grown around the stone until she found 2 human-sized vessels, which she cleaned with fabric. Into one vessel she poured the fresh milk. She drew water from the well for the travelers and filled the second vessel. The sound of horses was louder than ever. From all 4 directions at once, tiny armies appeared. The horses they rode were black and brown and white with rainbow eyes. The riders spoke in high-pitched voices and jingled their bridle bells. Their eyes were purple. The din of tiny lances against miniature shields was deafening as one army passed another. A sudden dark cloud appeared. Tamlin had said to look for his milk-white horse. She had had no need to worry about finding him. Out of the darkness, a white horse sparkled as his rider steered him toward her. Janet reached up and pulled Tamlin to the ground. He wore a high crystal crown. The army surrounded her on horseback, circling till the ground swelled with a tremor. Janet and Tamlin embraced within their circle. And then she felt his body grow large until he was a lion. The lion became a sea monster, a serpent, a raspy insect, a savage bird with claws, and many other forms, until Janet held tightly clutched a burning metal bar. She flung the metal into the vessel filled with water. The water boiled, and the metal glowed red until a hand appeared out of it. Janet reached for the hand, and she pulled. The entire body of a man emerged from the bubbling water. She immersed the man in the vessel filled with milk, and it turned to blood. The armies became still. From the north sounded the cry of a crow. A bush of green broom raged into fire to the south. To the west, a night owl cried. The Dark Queen appeared. She prayed for death because a mortal had stolen her prisoner, Tamlin. Then suddenly from the east came the light of dawn. Morrigan and the armies disappeared. Janet returned to her father's palace with Tamlin. The king named the stranger his successor to the throne. Tamlin. Now, some legends cover similar stories, but they don't always agree on the details. Imagine that. Like these next few about Kelpies from Scotland. Oh, yes, but wait for the 9 o'clock story crash. The Ballad of Rosamond. Be careful what you wish for, as they say. So, Kelpies from Scotland. Why do we always say Scotland? I don't know. It's fun though, isn't it? Scotland. The Curse of the Kelpie. Or I guess I should say the Curse of the Kelpie. The fires had burned for a week in the hope that those who had been lost at sea would see them and come home. From the tops of tall towers, guards looked as far as they could. All of them were asking the same question: what had happened to the sons of their chieftains? All was well up to a week ago. The chieftain's sons planned a fishing expedition. They set sail on a pleasant day into the friendly waters of Barra Sound from many places. They came from Erin, Sintyre, Ill, Dura, Colbassa, Muele, Tirov, Cola, Egg, Rome, Canag, and the outskirts of Barak, Ubradé, Ubastatois, Naharak, and Leotis. And from all the western isles they came. Off they sailed, happy as they could be, but not a one of the chieftain's sons returned. Their fathers came to Shikthioc to try to find out what had happened. From Erin, Sintyre, Il, Dewar, Covalsa, Muire, Tirad, Colo, Egg, Rome, Canag, and the outskirts of Barak, Udias, Ubatoath, Naharak, and Leotis, and from all the western isles they came. They sat around a mighty table in a great hall of the castle from the king of the island of Shikanoch. Alongside the king was a man who had been shield-bearer to the king's lost son. The king introduced the man as Donald. How could this be that you are here? Asked the Lord of Erin.
Are the more alive?
asked the Lord of Sintire demanded. Shame upon me forever, answered Donald. All but myself are gone, my lords, all but myself. They perished at sea, and I alone swam to shore, I alone to tell the tale. What happened to your hand there? Asked the Lord of Isle. Donald stared at the blood-soaked bandage covering his hand as though for the first time. I acted bravely, my lords, but it was not enough. The Lord of Isle fell silent. All in the hall were silent with their thoughts. The chief of Isle spoke again. Who brought upon us this curse of Ichirsiz? The hall gasped with his mention of the dreaded Kelpie. The shield-bearer looked at the king, who broke the silence. Speak, Donald. Hear me, my lords. This is what I saw. It was a white creature riding the spray of the waves. A mane it had like the foam that cloaks the rocks, and uttered the gentlest of whinnies. We saw the creature earlier by Island Namok. No one spoke. They say beauty can silence the bravest heart. But when it surfaced again, Prince Ian called out. More gasps overcame the hall. He called out, the Lord of Dire said. He called to the Kelpie. More gasps overcame the hall. The king looked at Donald, who came to Ian's defense. Ian loved the horses. Anyone who knew him knew that. The Kelpie was a beautiful sea-going horse. Does anyone say I lie? Continue, the Lord of Dora said. The creature went ashore, and we loved it and followed. Ian extended his hand to it. The creature nuzzled it. The gods have pity on us. The lords of Kolbasa, Mura, and Tarod murmured among themselves. The old lord of Kola lamented over his sons, for his loss. He was my only son. Lost to the Kelpie, reported the lord of Lealis in shock. As Prince Ian would have severed his own hand if he had known the cry would cause their deaths, interrupted Donald. Oh, if only he had severed it, argued the lord of Whaley. How could our sons not know what would happen? Yelled the Lord of Canuck over the Lord of Merley. Did one among you not think of the old stories? Intoned the Lord of Tyrone. Oh, we knew the story, said Donald. We were taught early about the Kelpie. We just didn't. We didn't believe you, my lords. We thought you invented it to scare us all. This Kelpie was so beautiful. Oh, well, now you believe, don't you? Answered the sorrowful king of Shigneoch. What difference does it make now? Cried the Lord of Rome. Hear Donald's telling, said the Lord of Tarok. Give him a drink first, commanded the Lord of Ubash Taroth. Donald took a hearty drink and continued his tale. We're on the island of Mook. The great creature walked among the pigs. They were not frightened. The princes marveled at the creature's grandness. On the ground it looked like a great cloud had come to earth. The Kelpie turned and stared at Ian, and he suggested we ride its back. We looked from one to the other. No one spoke of fear. Seeing it, who could be afraid? One after the other, young princes mounted the gentle white creature. I waited, and I mounted last. You mounted? You mounted upon the Kelpie? Oh, for God's pity! Exclaimed the Lord of Egg. The king gestured for Donald to continue. As the beautiful horse of the seas galloped over the shore, leapt from the sand to the top of the sea, on the tops of the waves it cantered ever west and toward the setting sun. It rode, and I lost all my bearings. The red gold of the sun disoriented us, and painting us its color, we rode, and we rode, and we rode, and we rode, and we rode. Yeah. Yes. And then we rode some more, and beauty swelled in our hearts, and no one tried to dismount. If only it occurred to me sooner. And then? Don't stop the telling, snapped the Lord of Barak. Oh, yes, and then I tried to wave my hands in the air, but I could not. All hands held tight to the Kelpie. I cried out to the princes, but they did not listen to me. I knew something was very wrong. The current that held us from Ian's hand down the line. Ian grasped the creature's mane. He passed it generally to everyone who held on. Then I took my hunting knife in my right hand. My left hand held the prince in front of me. I cut off my left fingers. See? Oh, yes. Put them away. And I was free. Jumping from the back of the creature, I swam. He stared at the bandaged hand. I'm lucky to be alive. Well, how'd they look when you last saw them? Demanded the Lord of Leotis. They were laughing and riding and riding and riding, and riding, and riding, and riding, answered Donald the shield bearer. Now, the next story is the Alma and the Kelpie. So, after her brother and the other princes were lost to the Kelpie, the sea creatures who rode away with them on its back, Diame sat off on the sand overlooking an inlet. Her father was the king of Shignoch. He prized Diame, whose name meant flawless jewel of the islands. One day she sat upon the shore of a loch and sang a sad song. Long the nights when I cannot sleep, I look out in the evening air. I remember the nights that you were here. You will never come again. I long for you, my love. A young man approached. He was handsome and smartly dressed. Man, it's easy to cry when you hear a song like that, he said. Look, I have a tear here on my cheek. Oh, I have not had the chance to enjoy the love about which I sing, answered Diame. But I have lost a brother whom I loved. Wipe the tear from my cheek, and you will feel better, said the young man. Diame dried the stranger's tear, and the drop stayed on her fingertip. It wet her breast, and she moved her hand away from her face. The warmth of the tear penetrated her heart, and she fell in love with the young man and his amazingly green eyes. Sir, please tell me your name. Usage, Lord of the Deep. I am the Kelpie. Does that frighten you? Now she knew the legend. One tear from the Kelpie makes a mortal his slave and lover. No, I'm not frightened, answered Diame. I love you, Diame, the Kelpie said. They met each morning on the beach as two mortals. They walked along the shore arm in arm, told each other stories, and took the afternoon naps. If I ever fail to awake when the sun begins to set, you shake me and tell me to depart, said the young man. Each day at his sunset he left for his underwater home to take the form of the Kelpie. One afternoon during their nap, Diame awoke. She saw her lover still in slumber. What a beautiful sunset this will be, and what a pity to wake him, she thought. So Diame closed her eyes. She reached to stroke her lover's hair, but instead of silken locks she felt strands of slime. Diame opened her eyes. A strange white sea creature was holding her. His hoof was in her hand. Another hoof trapped one of her braids beneath it. Diame cut off the braid to free herself. She no longer felt the Kelpie's magic in her heart. She was so upset by what she saw. For days afterward, Diame ignored the call of her lover from the beach when she heard it. She realized she was not his slave any more. When she went to the beach, she had a plan. I am wounded, my love, said the Kelpie, who appeared again as a young man. You've been ignoring me, but I'm happy you come today. Look, I cry for joy. Come, wipe away my tears. Not now, not ever. I know this is one of your tricks, Diame answered. It is your love and no other I require, the Kelpie protested, despite Diame's newly gained wisdom. Feelings for the Kelpie stirred in her heart. His green eyes still dazzled. She tried to rein in her feelings. Ik Usir, do you love me? She asked. For the rest of time, he answered. Then I would like a gift. Name the gift and it's yours, said the Kelpie. The gift I ask is for you to bring back the princes you stole, the chieftain's sons. Hello, Flossie. We got a bunch of more to go, so you're just in time. The Kelpie released a long, low sound, but then he agreed to her request to release the chieftain's sons. I know you scorn me, dear Diane. Nonetheless, the gift is yours on the eve when this world and the other world meet. The young man changed into a marvelous white horse. He reared on the sand before Diane. She watched him gallop until he ran out of beach. He leaped on top of the waves into the horizon, and Diame's eyes followed his path into the setting sun. Now, the eve when this world and the other world met was the sacred feast of Samhain, Halloween. You knew I'd squeeze Halloween in somewhere, right? Pipers played, and the women sang of the ancient songs. Dancers whirled about the festival hall of the king of Ceiliuradh, Diame's father. Diame waited for a gift. The great storm broke out. The waters of the ocean crashed upon the shore. The birds of the sea cried in fear and sought shelter. The only light in the thick, dark sky was lightning. The thunder shook the fortress of the king so that everyone ran outside under the rain-whipped beach. Out towards the horizon, the ocean appeared to reach for the sky. One wave stood taller and longer than all the rest, and it started to move towards the shore. The people standing on the beach watched it with fear growing in their hearts. Children started to cry, and the women stopped singing the ancient songs. The wave was closer now. Everyone on the beach backed away from it, climbing higher and higher onto the cliffs. The giant wave crashed into the shore and emptied on the sand and put out the lights and all the pumpkins. Ayame was first to understand what had happened. She ran to the place where the wave spilled. Out of the foam walked the sons of the chieftains, the missing princes. The mortals cheered, every one of them, even the king. And Ayame silently wished the Kelpie peace and love. And the little flames of the pumpkins leapt back into life. And so let's continue along that vein with the Kelpie and Doll, the blind one. There's a lot of Kelpie stories in Scotland. The chieftains of the Western Isles were grim-faced. They were meeting because their sons had been stolen away from the land of mortals by a Kelpie. See, like I say, this is a different version of the same story, though. It's the same, but not the same, you see? Now, a Kelpie was an evil but beautiful creature of the deep. It looked like a white seahorse. The kings were trying to decide on a plan to find their sons and to bring them home, but in their hearts, they did not think there was any hope. Oh, there's nothing we can do about it, said the king of Shidnoch. What, we have no magic powerful enough, agreed the lord of Erin. Fight the Kelpie's magic with your own, advised the king's druid. Impossible. There's no magic to fight a Kelpie, interrupted the lord of Barong. His kingdom was situated at the western edge of the ocean, and he had often caught a glimpse of the Kelpie. Oh, you all would rather sorrow than fight, challenged the druid. His name was Lamar. Our ships dare not enter the Corryvreckan, Lamar. The other world would claim them, answered the king of Shidnoch. Now, Corryvreckan is a boiling whirlpool, and also a mighty fine bottle of scotch, I might add. The Kelpie's palace lay directly beneath the Corryvreckan, and the druid saw the fear in the room. Dismiss a warrior to travel to the Doll the blind one, for wisdom, Lamar suggested. Oh, no hope, said the lord of Colla. Can he make the drowned rise from the sea? Challenged the lord of Erin. Once the lord of the dead has their souls, the dead cannot rise, the lord of each said. Now no chieftain offered to go to the hill of the Red Fox to find the blind one Doll. I will go, said Donald. A shield-bearer go? Impossible, said the lord of Rock. Donald had been the shield-bearer to the lost son of the king of Ceiliuradh. Only the king approved of Donald's suggestion, but that was enough, because he was, well, the king. You're a bold man, Danann. If you can return our sons from the grip of the Kelpie, all the better for you. We have no hope yet. We will tell no one of this plan, for if the Kelpie hears of it, all will be lost. So Donald took his shield and sword and soon arrived at the hill of the Red Fox. State your purpose, young warrior, said Doll, the blind one. I have come from Lamar, the court of the king of Ceiliuradh. Can you speak the magic that will bring the princes back from the grasp of the Kelpie? Trust is necessary. Do you trust me? Well, I just met you and you're kind of funny looking and you live in a weird place, but, well, really I have no choice but to trust you. There we go. Put your bandaged hand there into the cauldron then, said the blind one. Now, as you recall, Donald had ridden on Pelham the Kelpie's back with the lost princes, and once astride the creature at the end of the line of them, he cut off the fingers of his hand to release his grip, and he stopped the power of the Kelpie over him. He jumped back into the ocean and watched the creature disappear with the princes. The shield-bearer walked over to the cauldron. The water bubbled fiercely. Donald placed his bandaged hand deep into the churning water. At first, it burned horribly because it was churning and boiling, and it took great strength for Connell to not cry out. But he remained silent as his hand grew numb. Yes, wait. Here, let me get out my little meat thermometer here. 105, 212, 315. 315, perfect. Take it out now, ordered Doll, the blind one. When Donald withdrew his hand, he saw it was healed perfectly. All 5 fingers were back in their places. Yay, his fingers are back. Victory is ours, he cried.
Listen now carefully. Are you listening?
For the gods are with us, said Dol.
Only on one night can we try to get the princes from the Kelpie. That is a great festival of Samhain, the new year.
Halloween.
Then alone can the other world be seen by the world of the mortals. The souls can pass from one world to the other. We will have from sunset until the new dawn,
Dol answered.
If we fail, we will not be able to try again, you see.
Now Donald knew the meaning of the blind one's words. The ancient ones taught blackness came before light. People marked their days from sunset to sunset. Wonder how they handled daylight savings time. Yeah. And the new year began after the harvest with the onset of winter.
I will come to the castle of Ceiliuradh at midnight on the feast of Samhain,
Dol promised. So Donald returned to the chieftains and told them what the blind one had said, and although they had to wait for the night of Samhain to come, the chieftains confided their plan to no one. The king hosted a festival, and a great crowd came to celebrate in the castle hall. Pipers played, dancers swirled about the room, jumping high into the air. A great feast of delicacies adorned the plates and tables. At midnight, Donald and the kings of the Western Isles found Dol on the roof of the castle. Dol, the blind one, turned his face to the sea and began to chant, mesmerizing the others. Suddenly he broke off his incantation. I don't know how he got on the roof. He's blind. Yeah, I don't know. He's a druid. I don't know. Anyway, he broke off his incantation. The magic is done, he called. And the waters of Corryvreckan grew rough, and the great waves crashed upon the shore. The tremendous thunder and violent lightning tore at the sky and made the waters toss up into the cloudy skies. One wave, longer than the others, ripped into the shore. The spectators began to run, and then stopped in amazement when the wave opened, and from its foam emerged the lost princes. And forever after, Dol and Donald were revered as heroes. Okay, so beginning's the same. The princes got lost. The ending's the same. The waves came in, and there were the princes. So was it the crazy blind druid guy that got them back, or was it the princess who sacrificed her own very love to get her brother back with the Kelpie? Well, I don't know. I just tell the stories. But howsomever, we'll tell another story called Phanes the Vain. Yeah, we got another story. Cool, huh? 45 more minutes. I am amazed and pleased and honored that y'all are still sticking around. That's super, super cool. And of course, no harm, no foul, and no shame if you have to take off. But if you do, come back at 9 o'clock for the Ballad of Rosamond. On with Phanes the Vain. Phanes' father named her well, for the meaning of her name was vanity. Phanes was fair and vain. All the young men in the Scottish kingdom sought her as their bride. Men traveled great distances to woo Phanes. They came from the land of the chiefs who had lost their sons to the Kelpie. Remember them? From Erin, Sintire, Ele, Duur, Kobossa, Mule, Tarod, Kola, Ig, Rum, Kanag, and from the western lands of Barag, Ubdota, Dis, Ubusha, Tuath, Naharat, and Leodas. But Phanes had no favorite among them. Must have been a bunch of butt-ugly guys. You think none of the girls like them? I don't know. Maybe the girls are just vain. Oh, they are vain. That's her name. Got it. Okay. So Phanes had no favorite among all of these guys. She flirted with each suitor until he was captivated by her. When she had had his undivided love, she refused his offer of marriage. Oh, now I get it. Why should I marry any of them? She asked Diane May. Remember Diane May? I'm going to marry a great king. Of that there can be no doubt. No one else is good enough to win me. So Phanes was the cousin of Diame, the princess of Ceiliuradh, and Diame's brother was one of the princes the Kelpie stole. Remember? Yeah, of course you do. That was like 30 seconds ago. Diame missed her brother deeply, so this is before they got the princes back. She tried to influence Phanes to change her vain behavior towards men. Donald loves you, cousin, Diame said one day. Donald? Who's Donald? Wait, the shield bearer? Are you crazy? He doesn't even have a prince to defend any longer, scoffed Phanes, which was, of course, Diame's brother, and issues. Diame was very hurt by this, but she ignored Phanes' thoughtless outburst. Donald had been her brother's shield bearer, as I say. He was like a brother now to Diame, and she and Donald spent much time together, sharing thoughts and playing games and riding. Diame knew Donald was deeply in love with Phanis, for whatever crazy reason it might be. Of course, she was pretty, I guess. The festival of Samhain approaches, she said to Phanis. Why don't you agree to wed Donald and have a good beginning to the new year? Now, in case you're keeping track, we're on the fourth story, and I got to mention Halloween 4 times. Cool, huh? No, I didn't plan it that way. It just happened that way. Anyway, why don't you agree to wed Donald and have a good beginning to the new year? Diame said to Phanis. She referred to the festival which would take place on the eve of November 1st, which is what, October 31st? Cool, huh? I have plenty of time before the new year comes. Why rush? Besides, I am much too fair to settle for Donald. Not even a minor king would be good enough for me. I must wed a major king, Phanis replied. Now, Diame knew that Phanis was a major something, but anyway, she began to fear for Donald would be deeply hurt by Phanis before this was all over. It was the day before the festival of Samhain. Donald had until sunset to get Phanis to agree to be his bride. He searched the fortress until he found her. Beautiful Phanis, be my wife. Oh, you were serious. How can I ever be content with a lowly shield bearer like you? Donald left without another word. The festival began at sunset in the great hall of the king of Shikniok. Pipers played, women chanted the old songs of the people of the land, dancers danced around the traditional jigs, bards performed with the stories of the heroes and the gods, and many guests came, and they dressed in high style. They ate and they drank and they danced and they ate and they drank and they drank and they drank and they danced and they drank and they ate. And Donald asked Phanis to join him on the dance floor. You? Never. He waited. Diame stood alongside him and nudged her cousin. Phanis sighed and extended her hand to Donald with great arrogance. He bowed and led her to the dance floor. Shortly into the dance, a handsome stranger tapped Donald on the shoulder. Before he could say no, Phanis squeezed out of his embrace and accepted the stranger's hand. Oh, I will dance with this handsome king, she announced to Donald. Handsome king? He's none other than Kelpie, the Lord of the Deep, informed Donald. Donald speaks the truth, Phanis, Diame agreed. Oh, the two of you are jealous. Everything you do is marked by envy of me. I will dance with the handsome king and no one else this evening, Phanis said. While they danced, the stranger asked Phanis to marry him. Oh, well, I don't even know you yet, she flirted. You shall have much time to consider, he answered. They danced until the moon was nearly full. I will await your response on the shore. You must come before the moon is full, said the stranger. He left the hall immediately. Now Phanis the vain knew all the while they were dancing she intended to marry the handsome king. He was the best prospect who had ever wooed her. She did not bother to bid farewell to her cousin or Donald. She hurried down to the shore and she found the stranger waiting. I knew you would come, he said. I knew so too, said Phanis. He gave her a ring of a type of coral she had not seen before. You are mine now, forever, he said. Phanis felt a cold feeling through her body when she slipped on the ring. She warmed herself by looking at its grandeur. The stranger tugged at her hand. She found herself upon the back of a white sea creature which resembled a horse and rode the waves in the middle of the ocean. The creature laughed with the voice of a man who had been the handsome king. Phanis became afraid. With Phanis upon his back, the Kelpie dove into the boiling waters of the Corrie of Reckon, the great whirlpool. The Kelpie's palace was beneath it. Phanis screamed and wailed, but she knew there was no escape for her. Ah, you will begin now by polishing my coral throne until it glows, the Kelpie offered his bride. Then you will polish the floors and columns of my palace. And then you will polish all the walls in each of the 150 rooms. And then you will begin the task over again, for all you have done will begin to tarnish. Ronglas Moor, the great grey seal, approached. He was the Kelpie's closest friend. Perhaps you will learn some wisdom, he said to Phanis. Possibly the Kelpie will thaw your bitter, cold heart. Phanis began to polish the Kelpie's throne. Every day he reminded her, There's work here for 1,000 years. Do not relent in your polishing. Phanis bowed her head and did as the Kelpie said. Now, whether she learned wisdom or opened her heart, we don't know. But I think we can conjecture. Am I not on stream? Oh, I am. You are. Am I? Let's see. I am a Mr. Brother. Oh, good, I am. Wow. Like I'm way behind, though. Is that true? Whew. Well, yeah. If you can hear me, then good, we're good. If you can't hear me, no point telling you this. I know it sounds like my stream is like super laggy, way behind. So I don't know. Try voice, try stream. I should have thrown the media one in too. Let's see if we can do that real quick. Pause with me for just a moment while I turn up the media stream also. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. But I'll blather on so you think I didn't leave. So you don't think I left. Yeah. And then we'll put on media stream too. La, da, 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 da. If I can find it. It's here somewhere over the rainbow. Oh, that's a different song. That's Izzy. Oh, Miss Izzy. Anybody else know Izzy from Hawaii? What a great guy. Okay, we're getting close. Let's see, we need... Oh, that's not going to work anyway, I don't think. Maybe it will. Okay, one moment. I'm still blathering and kibitzing, and I'm going to try a thing here that maybe will help and maybe won't, and maybe it'll make it all worse. That's good, huh? Media. No, that's not it. Let's see. There we go. Okay. There's a possibility if stream's not working, if you click on the media button, it might work. And they're both on. I should turn it on before, and I didn't do that. That's in Second Life anyway. We having any issues in Kitely? Well, what the heck? Might as well do that too. I really wish I had stopped by the little storyteller's room before I started tonight's story. Okay. I think we're okay. And on with the next story, maybe. Oopa. Okay. So, supposedly, we should be on stream and on media and on voice. And, well, here we go. The Fianna and the Dark Lord. Where's this one from? We still in Scotland? Yeah, we're still in Scotland. Fianna, of course. Okay. Mirjin was deep in sorrow, for she could not find anyone to help her. Now, Mirjin was the princess of the Fomori, those who live under the sea. Day after day, she fled through the rocks and cliffs and streams of her underwater world. She hid in caves and under ledges, and once even in a school of fish. She was escaping from her pursuer, Tierna Duv, the Dark Lord. Duv was a wrathful man. Mirgin's father, the king, was very old. In his dotage, he had promised the Dark Lord his kingdom and her hand in marriage. Even before they were married, he had moved into their palace. Mirjin despised him. She would never wed him, except in chains. Rowing her boat under the red cataract, she looked up and saw a mighty band of warriors roaming home from a voyage. They were the Fianna, the greatest champions found in the 5 kingdoms of Scotland, and Finn MacCool was their chieftain. Whenever someone or some kingdom needed their help, Finn MacCool led them there. And now the champions were on their way back from the Western Isles, where they had undertaken a quest for that king. Though the cataract was fierce, rushing water, Mirjin stilled it. When the Fianna passed through, the sea was as silent and clear as crystal. And down on the ocean floor, they could see tall sea trees and waving branches of pink and yellow coral. There were great boulders with silver strands running through them. Suddenly, they noticed a boat gliding up from the bottom. Mirjin rowed it so deftly that not a wavelet disturbed the water's stillness and clarity. She came to a silent stop next to the warrior's ship. They could see that she was sad. "Greetings, champions of the Fianna," she said. "Tell us who you are, fair woman, and how you come to meet us," Finn MacCool responded. "Alas, I am Mirjin, princess of the Fomori, and long have I looked for you." "Indeed you are, Mirjin, for Mirjin means born of the sea. What do you wish of us?" "I am being chased by an enemy." "We fear no enemies. Tell us who pursues you."
I am promised to Tir-na-Dubh, the Dark Lord, in marriage. You alone can drive him from our kingdom.
Ha! Everyone knows of Tir-na-Dubh and the horrors he has done, said Oscar, Finn McCool's handsome grandson. It would be horrible to be married to him. I, Oscar, and all the Fianna will protect you, princess. Darkness seized the ship and the tiny boat. It seemed to cloak them up. In the heavens, the Fianna saw a warrior, riding a blue-gray stallion with a white tail and mane. He was thundering across the sky. His onyx helmet, shield, and mighty sword flashed rays of deepest black through the sky. The rays obscured the sun itself. The seas tossed about as though blown by a sudden tempest. The large ship of the Fianna and the tiny Fomorian boat rocked and blew to the shore. As the warrior and his steed landed, gusts of wind rocked the Fianna. This must be the Dark Lord of whom you speak, observed Finn. He makes quite a show.
None other,
she said in anguish.
Please help me against this power.
Now, Oscar, isn't it funny how all these odd, familiar names we're not familiar with, and suddenly there'll be like a Larry and an Oscar in there? I think it's fun. Oscar advanced into the shadow, ready to fight the warrior. His sword and shield were in place for battle. Move aside, Balak, said Tir-na-Dubh. His voice made the ground rumble. Oscar was insulted. Bob? You call me Bob? Defend yourself, Losh Bach. Losh Bach, you gelded he-goat. I didn't call you Bob, I called you Boy, and boy, you overreach yourself. The Dark Lord turned his attention to the princes. I come for you, not to fight with these boys. Oscar cast his spear at the warrior, and the Dark Lord's shield split in two. The Dark Warrior shrugged it and dropped it to the ground. Lucky shot, boy. Try again. Oscar cast a second spear, which found the heart of the warrior's horse. Oh, poor horsey. Now Tir-na-Dubh was angry enough to fight. He pushed Oscar aside and stood before Finn McCool. I challenge 50 Fianna to fight me. I will battle each one and win, said the Dark Lord. Oscar was angry at being ignored, but to no avail. 49 Fianna, the best of the clan, fought Tir-na-Dubh. Ferocious were the sounds of combat. Mighty was the swordplay to be seen in the distant places on that day. Last to meet the Dark Lord was Gaul, the finest of the Fianna. Their fighting was fierce, and much blood fell on the sands beneath their feet. Dubh grew tired, for he had defeated 49 Fianna. For an instant he dipped the point of his sword slightly, and Gaul moved in on him with a powerful thrust. The Dark Lord fell on the blood-spattered shore. A tired Finn McCool stood before him and spoke in verse. 50 Fianna fought him to bring him low. Evil the Dark Lord champion in battle. Shadows no longer haunt the sea. And now the wind died down too, and the waters were silent.
Oh, I can return to my land without fear, said the princess. Before I do, promise me your help if ever I need it again.
Roaring agreement, the Fianna swore to do the princess's bidding. They boarded the ship, and she turned her tiny boat for home. And the Fianna cheered her safe passage and set sail. A lot of ocean stories there in Scotland. So, let's see. Let's go to the Isle of Skye, which is in Alba. I tricked you. Those are all names for Scotland, aren't they? Anyway, the Island of Shadows was in Alba. Today it is called the Isle of Skye, and it belongs to the country of Scotland. The Island of Shadows was the home of Ceiliuradh, great female warriors unbeaten in battle. Hello, Rick. Bite-sized version of Outlander. Everybody raped everybody else and they all died. Sorry, I was uncalled for. Anyway, the Island of Shadows was the home of Ceiliuradh, a great female warrior unbeaten in battle. She was tall with red hair and walked with a large sword hanging from her waist. They all died happily ever after. I see I'm going to have some editing to do of the YouTube video after this. Well, see if I can get back on track. Here I am. And they all died happily ever after. The Island of Shadows was in Alba. Today it is called the Isle of Skye and belongs to the country of Scotland. The Island of Shadows was the home of Ceiliuradh, a great female warrior unbeaten in battle. She was tall with red hair and walked with a large sword hanging from her waist. Her school drew young warriors from many lands who wished to become champions. Ceiliuradh's second in command was Coca Groiv, the great bravest champion at the school. Now, it was not easy to approach the gate of Scothach School. You had to have the gifts of a great warrior, or you would surely die. One day, Scothach and Kokar watched a young warrior with interest. They knew he had passed to the plain of ill luck, where would-be crossers sank into a hungry bog of eternal stench. To get there, he had also survived the perilous Glen, where he had to fight his way through the hungry reptiles that lived there. But to reach the school's gate, he still had to cross over the Bridge of Leaps. In the time before time, a god had built this bridge, a god who thought that the short game with death was an amusing way to brighten the day. The bridge's middle came up whenever anyone stepped up on the end, and flinging the unfortunate crosser into a bottomless pit like a giant mousetrap from which his cries would echo for many hours. 1 in 1,000 made it across. He'll never do it. I wager my best sword on it, said the champion. Oh, but look, he has sense. He sat down to rest before he tries. I wager my best shield he does do it, Scothach answered. Both loved gambling. A grey mist announced the arrival of evening, and the young warrior stepped on the end of the Bridge of Leaps, the middle raised, and he fell backward to the dirt. He tried again, and once more he fell back from the bridge, luckily on land. Again he had the same result when he stepped on the end, and a fourth time he leaped straight to the middle. Before the enchanted bridge could throw him, he leaped to the far end. I will admit this youth to training. Let's go meet him, Scothach said, angry about losing his sword. Kakar accompanied her. My name is Satanta, said the youth. Satanta, say, didn't you kill the hound of King Kulan when it attacked you? And did you not remain with Kulan until the hound's pup was strong enough to protect the fortress? I know your name. It's Kukalain, the hound of Kulan, and you are 3 times welcome here, she said. Kokar, still angry about his sword, said nothing. They went to the feasting hall where Scothach's daughter, Uthak, was serving the students. She offered a tray of meat to Kukalain, and their eyes met. Ta-ta! When Kukalain accepted the tray from her, his fingers closed around one of hers in enthusiasm, and his tight grip broke her finger. Ow! Scothach screamed in pain. You great goose, it's my finger you broke. Kukalain fell to his knees. Lady, forgive me, I do not know my own strength. I will make amends. The sight of him on his knees, though, struck her heart, for she had known many clumsy warriors, but few who were polite, and she rapidly forgave him, and went somewhere and bandaged her finger. In response to her scream, Kokar Kroiv and the physician Ushmak ran into the hall. The physician set Uthrak's finger and rubbed poultices into it to stop the pain. And his jealousy of the champion rose like poison when he understood what had happened. You see, twice Ushmak, the physician, had proposed marriage to Scothach's daughter. Twice she had refused him. Now, in less than a day, she loved this young newcomer. He turned to Kukalain. You big ox, do you not know the difference between holding the hand of a fine woman and milking of a fine cow? Nay, bellowed one of the students. Has he ever done aught but be with the cows? Ha, ha, ha. Then he laughed, and Kukalain glared. She's forgiven me. What have you to do with it? Forgiving you, aye, if you didn't. If she didn't forgive you, what she'll lose next, her arm? Kothak, stop it, said Uthak. What, he does not know his own strength. Aye, said Kokar. Why should he know that when he doesn't even know his own father? No one knows his father. One day he just appeared in the arms of his mother, but the whole world knows his mother. And who helped you, ox, a god? In truth, Kukulain's father had been a god. His mother, Dectera, had loved the god Luglumfada, the finest warrior among the immortals, and she had given birth to Kukulain as the god's gift to her land, Ulster. Be silent, said Kukulain in a cold voice. Say what you wish of me, but speak of my mother and die. Both warriors reached for their javelins, positioned their small round shields in their left arms, and stalked each other in the feasting hall. Slowly Kakar Groiv neared his opponent, who stood fixed and calm and watched him approach. Then swiftly Kokar threw his shield to the ground at the same time as he brought up his javelin, but more swift than a hornet's sting was Kukulain, who threw his javelin so fast Kokar it hypnotized him for a moment, and when he saw it, the javelin was already in him, and he fell dead on his side. The end. Well, almost. Scothach looked coolly at Kukulain. Surely, I say. You are to be the greatest warrior in Ulster, yet you have killed my champion, she proclaimed. Now what am I to do? She said, putting her hand on his sword. Well, first, please don't call me Shirley. Second, what I did for Kulan, I will do for you, Kukulain answered. I will remain here for a year and a day, and I will be your champion. Cuchulainn and Uthok also grew better acquainted and met every day after his training was finished, and Cuchulainn became the champion of the school, for no other warrior could overpower him in a match of skills. All right, then. And on to, let's see, went to Cornwall, went Brittany. We'll go to Brittany. There's where we'll go.
Brittany?
Yeah, Brittany. With a curse and an oath. Cuckoo. Yeah, right. All the village of Botsoro loved the twin boys, Malday and Primal. They never did anything bad, well, except once. When they were 10, they were walking by the road. They came upon an old lame beggar who could not walk without a stick on his way to the village with one green eye and one blue eye. Malday grabbed the old man's stick.
Please stop that, said the old man. I can't walk without my stick. I'll have to crawl to the village.
Laughing, Malday threw the stick to Primal.
Have mercy on me, boys,
the old man begged.
and the gods will have mercy on you.
The twins stopped their teasing and returned the stick to the man. And then Primal snatched it and handed it off to Malday again. And then both ran around the man, waving his stick at him. They kept at this for some time until they both got tired of the game, and only then could the man, who was now very angry, go to the village.
The curse of Anku upon you both, he yelled.
Anku was the spirit of the dead. The boys were not troubled. They were too young and strong to worry about anything dead, like death. They continued enjoying life and were inseparable. Soon they did not remember what they had done to the old man. Their mother remarked one day,
Death alone can part you two.
The boys looked at each other. Primal spoke first.
Let's make an oath, brother. If I die first, I'll come back and tell you what it's like. Well, yes, and if I die first, I'll come back and tell you.
Malday vowed.
If you must suffer, I'll share your suffering.
Primal promised.
If I'll share your suffering if you must suffer.
Malday promised. Now, not long after, an evil swept the region. It was as if Anku himself appeared in Botsoro. Primal developed a raging fever and died. The end. Now, once again, it's not really the end, because while he clung to life, Malday sat by his bedside day and night. By not leaving his grave until dirt was placed over Primal's coffin, Malday made certain that no evil spirit stole his soul, you see. The evening following the burial was, drumroll please, the Druid festival of Samhain, October 31st, when the gates between the worlds of the living and the dead opened, and there was passage between both. The villagers extinguished their home fires at night to keep themselves safe. They waited for the sun to rise to bring in the new year. Malday was too distraught over his loss of Primal to celebrate. He went to bed before midnight, but he could not sleep. He heard familiar footsteps outside, and a voice he knew well called his name.
Brother, I am so glad to see you here,
Malday said with joy.
But how can this be? Remember our oath,
said Primal.
Now is the time to come with me. How is the other world? I am forbidden to speak about it, but if you come, you'll see for yourself.
So Primal led Malday to the edge of a mill pond whose water was dark and very, very cold. He told his brother to take off all his clothes and to dive into the pond with him.
I'll freeze, and I can't swim,
Malday protested.
Remember your oath,
Primal reminded him. Primal pulled Malday, his brother, into the pool, and Malday began to shiver uncontrollably. Primal told him they needed to bathe until dawn.
I'm suffering, Primal, have mercy, said Malday. Remember, I'm still alive, brother. You would have to die to understand what I have suffered, Malday,
said Primal.
I've only been dead for a day and a night. Stay with me, please.
Finally, they heard the cock crow, cuckoo-choo.
If you're brave enough, I will come for you tonight, Primal said.
I will honor our oath, said Malday. Malday stood on the shore of the pond and dressed in the clothes he had removed. He returned home very pale and hungry. While his mother prepared his meal, she asked if he needed a doctor, but he told her no. That evening, Primal and Malday dove into the pond again, and Malday trembled and shivered, unable to stop the shaking. But he had sworn an oath to his brother, and he stayed in the black water until he heard the cock announce the dawn once more, cuckoo-choo, or cock-a-doodle-doo. It depends on what part of Brittany you're in. They have the roosters there speak different languages. He went straight to bed without bothering to eat. He was so pale that his mother called the doctor without asking permission this time, and when the doctor saw Maude, he was so concerned he slept outside his bedroom. He followed the young man down to the mill pond, protecting himself from the spirits of the dead under a rowan tree. The doctor watched and waited. When Primal and Maude entered the pond, Maude could barely walk. "This is the last night you'll have to do this, brother," said Primal. "You have cut my suffering in half, and now I can pass into the other world," Primal said. "But I cannot survive this night," Maude answered. "You can if you're strong, brother," Primal assured him. When the cock crowed, the doctor heard each brother scream the other's name. A winged white snake rose from the dark water and curled slowly towards the dawning sun. Maude lay clothed on the shore, and the doctor carried him home, but Maude died before midnight that evening. The terrified villagers heard his screams coming from under the mill pond, even though Maude died at home. In the village, the story of the twins was told and retold. For years, the screams of Maude penetrated the waters of the pond. One day, they stopped, though. And some say that on that day they saw an old lame beggar with one green eye and one blue, supported by a stick, pass by the mill pond. Hey, don't mess around with old guys with sticks trying to walk down the street. Jeez, goofballs. Oh well, anyway. Oh, you're still here. Yay. Okay. The Hood S and Carrie S. Boy, yeah, that's easy for me to say. "I give you a warning about your child," said a holy man to the king of Broeric. "One day he will eat pork, drink water down wine, and swear against the gods. And on that day, he will die. He will be poisoned, burned, and drowned in this order." What a nice prophecy that is. "Oh, nonsense," declared the king of Broeric. So those present at court made fun of the prophecy. The king banished the holy man to his hermitage, and royal gifts accompanied him, however, just in case he had spoken the truth. The baby prince grew into a handsome young man. He married and became King Gwazenag of Broeric. One day, while he was hunting in the forest, he saw a beautiful woman by a lake. Her clothing was green, red, silver, and gold. It was very fine. Her face reminded the king of the wonders of nature. "Fair maiden, who can you be?" he asked. "I am named Whirlwind, Tempest, and Storm." The king laughed because he was brave and strong. "Maiden of the winds, accompany me to my palace. I will give you everything in my power if you stay with me." "Have I not warned you to expect a storm?" "I invite you nonetheless, for you're very beautiful, the latest and newest of the bentos I expect, and I am strong enough to withstand it." "Well, I will come if you do what I request," the maiden answered. "You may call me Aveldro, after the whirlwind." King Gwazenag stared into her eyes and agreed to act as she wished. The bishop of the king recognized Aveldro's powers to mesmerize the king, and he warned Gwazenag that she was a female druid. Aveldro overheard and caused a fierce wind to sweep through the palace hall, which drove the bishop outside. Gwazenag waited until Aveldro was out of earshot, and he sent a messenger to the bishop with his apology. But Aveldro knew the king's very thoughts. That evening she brought him dinner. Gwazenag took a bite of the meat she served him. "How can this be? We've had no beef or mutton in our kitchen for some time," King Gwazenag declared. "Oh, it's the pig in the kitchen slaughtered for the servants, my lord," Aveldro answered. The king recalled the words of the holy man which he was taught. He spat out the pork, and he reached for a glass of wine to cleanse his mouth. The wine seemed weak, so he asked why. "Oh, as there was only one flagon of good wine in the palace, I added water to it," Aveldro said. "The gods be damned!" the king shouted. Gwazenag turned pale. He realized he had fulfilled the 3 parts of the prophecy. He could not sleep that night and asked Aveldro to bring him a glass of water. She added a few drops of poison to his drink. The next morning they awoke to the smell of fire. Aveldro had intended to remain with the king until he died, so no one would blame her for the poisoning him. Instead, she fled to safety. Gwazenag awoke drugged, for he was not yet overtaken by the poison. He wobbled down to the kitchen because the roof over his chambers was burning. He stumbled into the first tall water vat he found, and unfortunately he was too drugged to swim, and he drowned. The bishop was overwrought by what had happened. He set out westward to take up residence in the kingdom of Kenev, where Glen was the king. Graddan ruled from the city of Kerris, which was protected from the sea by a great dike with 2 huge gates. The gates were secured by a giant padlock, and the king wore the only key to the lock around his neck. The bishop rode up to the gate and asked for entry. Graddan granted permission, and the bishop slipped through quickly. The bishop asked why the king appeared so sad. Graddan said the king Gwyneddig's army had killed his queen and his only son. It happened on a raid early in Graddan's rule. When Gwyneddig was expanding his kingdom, I went to Gwyneddig many times for compensation, but he turned me away, the king said. When the bishop told him he came from Gwyneddig's kingdom, he knew nothing of the story Graddan told him. The king saw he spoke the truth. Then the king introduced his daughter, Ceiliuradh, and the bishop was amazed to see that she was, actually a Veldro. He related how the princess had duped Gwyneddig into falling in love with her so she could destroy him. I was only avenging the deaths of my mother and my brother, the princess explained. The bishop admonished her and reminded her that every action has a consequence. Ceiliuradh, or a Veldro, did not care for consequences. That evening, a handsome young man spoke to her. I am Oponsis, god of love. How would you like to spend this evening at my palace? Oh, yes, I would love to. Wait, there is one small condition. Before we go, you must prove your love for me by removing the lock and opening the city gates. Oh, but the city will drown, Ceiliuradh cried. No, it won't. I'm a god, trust me. Trust my love to save it. Ceiliuradh stole the key from the king when he slept. She placed it in the lock and turned it. Oponsis watched as water gushed through the open gates. Save the city, she cried. The young man's beautiful body became the twisted form of a devil. Attached to it was Gwyneddig's face. Her father came up alongside the screaming Ceiliuradh, and on his fastest horse he said to jump up behind him, and she did, but the sea made it impossible for them to pass. The bishop rode up alongside of them. You must go without her. That is her consequence. She can live forever among the merfolk in the sunken palaces of Kerris. The king reluctantly pushed his daughter into the water. Goodbye. And the waves receded. He and the other inhabitants of the city fled to safety. Ceiliuradh, or a Veldro, remains alive to this day as a mermaid. Whew. Okay. Let's see. Well, how about I go back to Ireland and wrap this up? I think we can squeeze this in 10 minutes. The Voyage of Muldoon. Every day the young nobles of the land competed on the palace grounds. Whether they played ball, had leaping contests through the stone, played chess, rode, or raced horses, they played to win. Today they had a foot race around the fortress, and Muldoon won. Muldoon's the fastest in Ireland, said Muldoon, one of the princes. He's faster than any of us, said his brother, the second prince, who always finished second to Muldoon. He's an impostor, the son of a lord challenged. He pretends to be a prince. No one knows anything about his birth. Muldoon raced to the queen. For as long as he could remember, she had been his mother. Tell me the truth. Who are my parents? He asked. Oh, ignore what the mean-spirited youth said to you. You're my son, answered the queen. Until I learn the truth, I will not eat or drink another thing, said Muldoon. Does any mother love a child more than I love you? Asked the queen. Thank you for your love, but I must have the truth, Muldoon protested. Very well, my son, I will bring you to your birth mother, said the queen. And they found Muldoon's mother in a small cottage. She welcomed them and told Muldoon about his father. He was a chieftain named Alil Oscar Oga. A band of raiders murdered him when you were a baby. I pleaded with the queen to care for you because I wanted you to have a comfortable life, said the woman. I would avenge my father's death, Muldoon shouted. Oh, that would not be a wise idea, the woman said. The queen pleaded. Why embark upon a difficult journey to find his murderer when you never knew your father? Stay here with your 3 brothers. Muldoon and the queen bid his birth mother farewell. At home, Muldoon thanked the queen for treating him like a son. He said goodbye, and he left to seek the counsel of the Druid in the northwestern hills. The Druid handed Muldoon a piece of parchment. Here you go. I wrote the other side. What did I do with it? Oh, here it is. It's right here. I wrote the exact day you are to construct a curragh. I put the day on it you're to sail next to it, and choose 60 men to accompany you on the journey. Now, not one more, not one less than 60. You hear? said the druid. On the day of construction, Muldoon built a corrog, a large boat shaped like a canoe. He chose 60 companions, among them his friends Germain and Durian. The day to depart arrived, and the wind was favorable for sailing. As the corrog set sail, Muldoon saw his 3 foster brothers on shore.
"We want to come too,"
said the oldest.
"Turn back for us,"
said the prince in the middle.
Wait, we'll swim out and catch you,"
said the youngest. So the 3 princes dove into the waves and pursued the corrog. "Oh, sail toward them and let them on board, but woe to us for having a crew of over 60 men," Muldoon told his crew. All day and evening, all the following day, they sailed and saw only water. At midnight of the second evening, they saw 2 barren islands separated by a small bay. A great house sat on the lower edge of the island, on the lower edge of each island. Muldoon and the voyagers heard the loud voices of people. Music accompanied the outlandish stories, which they could only hear some phrases. Boisterous warriors boasted of successes in battle. One warrior spoke louder than the rest, and the travelers heard every word he shouted. "No one's as mean as me. I murdered Ali Lokar Aga, and no one's bold enough to avenge his death." "Dock them out. I must seek revenge," Muldoon shouted. A tempest blew up suddenly, though, and carried the corrog far out to sea. Nothing the voyagers tried to do could change their direction. The wind carried them away from the 2 barren islands, the words of the arrogant warrior. And they traveled by sea for countless years, having many adventures. Some of their adventures were terrifying. They found an island populated by ants as large as horses, which tried to devour them. On another island, they encountered huge beasts whose bodies turned inside their skin. And when they had been sailing many nights and days in pursuit of Muldoon's father's murderer, they were starving. "Let us try to find food on that island," suggested Muldoon to his crew of 63 men. Among them were his 2 friends, Germain and Durian. "It's large enough to offer nourishment," Germain said. They sailed closer and about to dock when Durian shouted, "Look at the red pigs!" A herd of bright red animals, which looked like pigs, were grazing in a lush apple orchard. One of the animals spied the corrog, and he began to charge. Within moments, the large herd was charging toward the shore, and they all exhaled fire. "Oh, there's flames inside of them, too. They're red, all right," Durian exclaimed. "Well, let's wait and watch them," Muldoon ordered. The red animals lost interest in the boat. They turned back toward the orchard and charged the trunk of a large apple tree with their hind legs. Fruit fell to the ground like streams. They ate the fallen apples and napped in the hot sun and woke up breathing fire. They got hungry again. They charged and kicked a different tree. They ate and they napped. The red animals did this many times before the sun set. As a herd, they then retired to a cave which the voyagers saw in the distance. "Yeah, they'll stay there overnight, I warrant," said Germain. "Well, let's observe another day," Muldoon said. Groans of hunger came from the crew and answered him. The next morning, the red-hot animals were back in the orchard, and what the voyagers missed yesterday were the large flocks of birds at sea. The birds swam away from the island toward the open sea from dawn till noon. At noon, they changed direction. When the red animals were in the cave, the birds came ashore. "They want to be on that strange island?" Durian asked. The flocks of birds flew a short distance to the orchard and began to pluck apples from the trees, and they ate heartily. "Let 2 scouts go ashore and gather fruit like those birds," Muldoon said. So the 2 scouts found the sand was as red hot as the animals' breath, and they raced to the orchard. They threw as many apples into their bags as they could until the changing from one foot to the other constantly did not stop the burn. They returned to Muldoon and told him about the sand. "Better to wait until the evening when the sand is cooler, then the herd must heat it up during the day," Muldoon said. So they waited until midnight. And then the sand was tolerable, and the voyagers filled bag after bag with fruit until right before dawn, when the flocks of birds took to the sea. "Time to go," Muldoon commanded. Muldoon and the 63 men sailed until their stock of apples was gone and they had nothing to drink. They spotted another island. "Do you see that magnificent palace?" Durian shouted. The corrog docked outside a white wall without a single blemish around the palace. The gate was open. They entered carefully and did not find anything of immediate danger. They walked through one room after another until they came to a great hall, and there they saw a small cat in the hall, and the cat was busily licking itself. Around the hall were a number of pillars for decorations, and the cat started jumping from one pillar to another. Tables were spread with platters of boiled ox and roasted hog. Enormous drinking horns of ale were tempting too. "Can this feast be for us? We've seen no one but this tiny cat," Muldoon said. The others nodded yes. The voyagers feasted on the meat and they drank the ale. They fell asleep on the couches in the great hall and did not wake until morning. They packed what remained from the feast in their bags, and they poured ale into large vessels. Hey, what of those jeweled necklaces up there on the shelf, eh? Asked a young man on Muldoon's party. Take nothing else. We were fortunate to have food and drink, said Muldoon. But the young man stuffed a necklace into his bag, and the little cat sprang from one of the pillars. In seconds, the man's body had turned to ashes. Muldoon removed the necklace from the bag and returned it to its place in the great hall. Sorry, little cat. We'll return to our boat. And another island was supported by a pedestal in the sea. The fruit that intoxicated anyone who ate it grew on a different island. Some of the adventures were pleasant. They were treated to plush beds and a daily supple of fresh salmon served from the sea on the island of the House of Salmon. Sweet apples from another island fed them for 40 days at sea. And on one island, the herds of oxen, cows, and sheep were plentiful, enough to feed them when the apples were gone. They stayed several days to eat and took a supply of meat back to the crock. Then they set sail and traveled west. Hey, isn't that Ireland? Shouted Muldoon. And they went on in a westerly direction and came to the barren islands they encountered when they set out so many years ago. No wind impeded them from docking this time. Voices led them to one of the two houses. A loud voice from inside the house said, Muldoon is Alil Akar Aga's son. He's been drowned at sea for a long time. The voice belonged to that warrior who boasted about the murder of Alil Akar Aga, Muldoon's father. Muldoon knocked, and the warrior greeted him warmly as the head of the house. Who are you, traveler? I am Muldoon, returning from the sea. Enter, you and your men. My finest meats and wine are yours. You shall have fresh garments and warm beds tonight, the men invited. So, accepting the hospitality, Muldoon forgave the man who murdered his father. He and his crew shared stories of the sea and their adventures with their host. Some days later, Muldoon, his foster brothers, and the crew set sail for home. But, holy cow, 8 p.m., top of the hour. How did you swing that?